Julie, thank you very much for speaking with us. So let me ask you, we are going to be talking about disruption, but what does that term mean to you and how have you experienced it in recent years?
Well, I'm a great fan of Professor Clayton Christensen. In fact, we're blessed that he sits on one of the Tata boards. And I still think his book, even though it's a decade old, The Innovator's Dilemma, is a classic Bible for the innovator. I see it as any new entrant into an industry that identifies new value and in doing so disrupts the rest of the industry. And Professor Clayton, his first theory was around coming in at the bottom of the pyramid and finding overlooked value. I think that has shifted, and now the vectors of disruption can come in, very much at the top, premium, as well as sort of slicing new value.
Give us an example of that from your vantage point.
In terms of myself as a consumer, I really think what Tony Fadell did with his Nest company. I mean, he was blessed coming out of Apple with an army of talent. And Honeywell was doing a fantastic job of creating and providing functional air conditioners. But they weren't, appealing, they weren't a thing of desire.
But they couldn't think.
And they couldn't think. But not only did Tony come in and create something that had intelligence and connected it with the smartphone movement, but it also was desirable. It became a thing of beauty. I've been at dinner parties where people have talked with such joy about having a Nest in their home, and now to seeing that as a platform, which can become more around the smart home, especially now with Google's backing. So I think that's really cool. And frankly, Honeywell just didn't see him coming. Another example that I also find interesting, and I have I'm pleased to see it in the market, is Airbnb. I've got a few properties around the world, and I don't want to rent them out, but I don't particularly want them sitting empty either. And I'm also somebody who's a bit quirky in my travel, so I like to go a bit off the beaten track. My husband hates B&Bs, and we tended to get it half right and half wrong. So when Airbnb came in and recreated what was a bit of a crusty, unpredictable offer, for the traveller, that as a platform has been interesting. But then to see governments talking about, let's create new policies for the sharing economy. So, I've lived in the Netherlands, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in the US. Governments now will say legitimately tax-free, you can rent so many days of your home through Airbnb. This is, creating wealth and options. And then, if you want to be an Airbnb, but you can't be in the same city, a whole industry's concierge, so you can have like a concierge to look after your apartment. So I think those are two completely different examples of how disruption was created. But what really sort of ties them together is almost, frameworks are quite helpful to intellectualize problems, and I see it as, is there a new way that you're creating value? Is there a new way that value is being consumed? Is there a new way of quality control? And is there a new way of scale? And particularly with Airbnb, peer review, scale, they don't own any inventory. So it's a CapEx light model. So I think that as a business leader, if you're looking at innovation and wanting innovation to be meaningful rather than peripheral, you have to be able to answer those four questions very honestly and with complete rigor.
So what are your clients telling you, or what's the one or two most disruptive needs or demands that you are seeing amongst your clients at this point of time?
Well, fortunately, no matter where you are in the value chain, you're either fearful of being disrupted, you're looking forward to disrupting somebody else, or you're in the process of being disrupted. And if I had to sum it up in one word, it would be digital. So all of our clients are saying, we're at this stage in the digital journey. How can you help us? And everything from American pizza company coming into India and wanting to know, could Internet of Things, could sensors on our packaging help the customer experience? So I would say it centers around digital, and then everybody knows the vectors of digital, mobile, social, getting the data, and of course cloud. And those things really come as a cluster. I hate it when I'm asked to speak. Come and speak about cloud. It's like, I can't speak about cloud without speaking about all the others, and I think that's our most mature customers and partners really see them all interconnected.
Right. So you mentioned digital, and that's an interesting segue, I guess, to ask a more fundamental question. So can you plan for digital? Do you plan a month ahead? Do you make 5-year plans, 3-year plans, or no plans at all?
Well, I'm a woman who likes to have a plan, so I would always encourage planning, but I think plans should be seen as, as an axis, but not a fixed path. It's interesting with my chief marketing officer hat on. The CMO is actually a great force for digital disruption. However, if the CMO builds too much of a promise that then the rest of the company cannot deliver, then that becomes this expectation chasm. So I think it's good to have that friction, but it's good to have an underlying plan of where you are going to, where's the value you want to create, and you have to stay really focused on that, because it's really easy to say for the CEO to come in and say, I need an app. Everybody's got an app, but if it's not in the context of how are you trying to delight your customer, how are you trying to get them to buy more and be advocates.
Right. So, there's an interesting interplay here, I think. So, there is technology that you can use, that's existing technology to use to solve known problems, and then there is using technology to solve unknown problems. Mm-hmm. So, where do you sit in this equation, if I could ask you that? Well, and how, more importantly?
What I love about Tata Communications is that we are an enabler. We're not only, a force of disruption, but we're also an enabler for lots of other companies to disrupt. So if a company is looking to go into cloud, it's really hard to do that on a point-to-point basis, because the whole point of cloud is you can launch businesses globally. You don't need infrastructure. You can work with whatever is the right cloud service for that particular business challenge. And if a CIO is left with the dilemma of having to build it all himself, then it defeats the agility, the whole principle. So we look for platforms like that where we can actually enable whole new value chains. I think our ISO platform is a good example. And the value to the CIO is that we've pre-connected to over 50% of the cloud companies in less than a year. And we've done that in more than 50 countries in the world. And that means that the CIO can sort of draw a line there and say, okay, I now have to work on these pieces. I don't have to build it from scratch. If we'd come at this the conventional way, it would have taken us 5 years. So we try to have this mantra, which is let's be the Uber of telecoms. We don't, there's value in putting the platform together, and if you've got 20% of the IP and the other pieces are put together, that is as much value as as spending the time and money to build the whole platform.
Right. So is technology digital? Or is digital technology, are the two terms interchangeable? Are people confusing the two sometimes?
That's a fantastic question. That's the first time I've ever been asked if digital is technology. Technology is an enabler of digital, and digital drives technology innovation. So I would say they're bedfellows. But I think digital is as much about understanding the customer experience. It's as much about the user interface, the design. We've all, you can have the most perfect functional capability, but if it doesn't emotionally connect with the consumer because it's easy to use, it's joyful, why do we use it? There's I think 3 million apps in the world, but most of us use less than 10 because they deliver the value and they're joyful to use. So I think it's as much about design, it's digital as design, it's understanding your customer journey, understanding your customer value, and then it's enabled by technology. And one of the things that I think the industry needs to do more of is bringing those hybrid teams together. We need to see more, digital expertise in the IT's office, and we need to see more IT in the CMO's office.
Right, Julie, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.